Okay, the price of paradise. The price of paradise. I always talk about this because I think every hurricane season we do put some of the most beautiful destinations to the test. And today it is Hawaii. While we aren't expecting a landfall from Hurricane Kiko, we are going to see some of those fringe effects, so to speak,
it's true,
over the next 24 to 48 hours. And Kiko is expected to weaken as it passes to the north. But if it feels like we kind of just did this, well, we kind of did. Last year around the same time, right? Except it was Hurricane Hone that we were talking about. The video you see here from last August, Fox Weather Correspondent Robert Ray was on the Big Island when Hurricane Hone passed just to the south of the Aloha State. We have Fox Weather Correspondent Robert Ray joining us now. And Robert, you were there to cover that. And we did have quite a bit of rain from Hone and what I think were probably bigger impacts as it passed to the south than what we'll see when it comes to Kiko.
Yeah, it seems that way, Marissa. Good morning to everyone. Indeed, as Hurricane Kiko is driving its way toward the Hawaiian Islands as we speak, we look back at Hurricane Hone about a year ago, and we look at some of this video as we were prepping on the Big Island. You know, we flew into Kona, and first thing I noticed was the big swells and the waves that were crashing in to the shoreline on the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii. And we were assessing at that point, based upon the trajectory of where Hone was headed. We knew it was going to head to the south, but exactly where the impacts would be, we weren't quite sure when we landed 3 days before. So we went into Kona, looked at that area, and then as we looked at the entire island and the path of Hone, we decided to cross the island, go over the landscape, which is extremely high in elevation, through a rainforest and back down into Hilo on that side of the island, because the southern tip is where Hone was going to create the largest effects, and that included swells, flash flooding, high precipitation, and winds. And indeed, we got all of that, not a direct hit, but enough where that counter twist as it was moving in created about 2 feet of rain in some areas. And what happens when you have that much rain in the landscape with mountainous terrain? Well, it all has to come down, right? And so that's what we experienced as we saw rivers just swell and flood and send that water rushing down into the Pacific Ocean. Quite a scene to see, and many roadways were shut down and impassable completely. As a matter of fact, we in the aftermath of Hilo, after we experienced some of the gusty winds in some areas up to 70 miles an hour, and then the rain, we tried to make our way to the south point of the island, the Big Island, but could not because of roadways that were inundated, shut off, and completely flooded. So a mixed bag, you know, when you don't have a direct hit, but when you're looking at islands that are literally, you know, isolated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, anything goes. And that is why the preparations were so intense, and why they're so intense even right now for Kiko, even though a direct hit and the impacts will be less than what we saw last year. But National Guard in force, as Michael Estime has been reporting, state of emergency on the Big Island and parts of Maui. Look, Hawaiians are always ready for the impacts of the environment. We saw it 2 years ago in the aftermath, unfortunately, of the Lahaina fires with those heavy winds. And then we saw it last year during Hone, and we'll see it again as Kiko is making its way. But a place that really doesn't get direct hits very often, but nonetheless, they're always ready for the impacts of these tropical cyclones coming through the Pacific, guys.
Yeah, noting that the governor did already declare that state of emergency. That was out of the weekend. Also, at that point out of the weekend, we weren't sure how close we would see Hone. And we still have to wait to see how close the center really does get. But it is weakening. I think that's the important part, even with some of those fringe impacts.
Close calls. That's just what Hawaii has to deal with sometimes. And sometimes you do get those landfalls, too. All right, Robert Ray, appreciate it. Thank you.